This is an introductory video about the Renaissance. While watching this video, you want to take some good detailed notes on pages 1 and 2 of your new notes handout, Renaissance notes handout. The Renaissance begins in Italy, and here's the Italian peninsula. You want to remember that Italy is the heart of trade in Europe at this time, and it's no coincidence that the Renaissance movement begins in Italy. And this is because of the influence of the increase of trade that Italy is at the heart of. Remember, Italian merchants are going over to the Middle East, connecting to the rest of the old world trade network, and then bringing those goods back to Europe and distributing them through northern Italy to the rest of the European continent here. The Renaissance, this term Renaissance, it translates literally into rebirth. And what the Renaissance represented was a desire, a stated desire by the Renaissance thinkers to bring about another great age of Western civilization. So this movement was highly intentional, on purpose. The Renaissance was brought about on purpose by a group of middle-class intellectuals and artists. It was a middle-class cultural and intellectual movement. And it sought to bring about, quote-unquote, another great age. But additionally, a major focus of the Renaissance was to reformulate and reorient the beliefs and some of the values and some of the emphases of their society. This is carried out by the middle class. And remember the nature of the middle class. These are your successful merchants. These are your business owners. So these are individuals who are part of the underclass. They're not part of the hereditary elite, but they have also escaped being peasants or serfs. These are financially successful individuals who are leading this movement. And the other thing to note up front is that the Renaissance marks the end of the medieval time period. Okay. Also on the first page, let's talk a little bit about the way in which the Renaissance thinkers viewed history. On the y-axis, we have here progress, and on the x-axis, we have here time. This is the way in which the Renaissance thinkers viewed human history. They saw human history, and you can jot this down on your page as well, as a cyclical process of rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. So their goal is to bring about another great era in the history of Western civilization. But they're also looking to reformulate their society away from some of the emphases and values of the medieval. So what the Renaissance thinkers are going to do here with their vision of bringing about another great era, they're going to look backwards in history to eras that they thought were great. And that would be Rome here, you can put that into your graph on your page, and Greece. They're going to look back to the classics or the ancients. And these are the prior eras of Greece first and Rome second, that the Renaissance thinkers are going to look to for inspiration and for guidance in terms of reformulating and reorienting the values of their society, and from their vantage point, in the process, bringing about another great era. Now, with all that in mind, we can note a few things off of this outlook regarding human history. One, it speaks to a belief in human capability, because they believe that through their efforts in imitating and looking back to Rome and Greece, respectively, that they can bring about another great era. So that speaks to a level of belief in human ability. But note also on the graph, they do not believe that they can exceed. They only believe that they can get to the same level of greatness. But they do not believe that they can exceed or go beyond prior eras. Additionally, there are limitations in their outlook in terms of their capability and ability, because they also do not believe that they can sustain this great era. They believe inevitably, although they have faith that they can bring about another great era, that ultimately it will end in a period of decline. They will lack of belief that they can sustain greatness. Now, Contrast this outlook that we've just described here, the belief that they cannot go beyond prior eras and the belief that they cannot sustain their greatness, with some of the modern outlooks. A more modern outlook is going to say that human beings can go beyond prior eras, that prior eras are not the limit at which we can achieve. And not only is there the belief that we can go beyond prior eras, but also the belief generally in the modern outlook that it can be sustained, that we in fact can continue a trajectory onwards and upwards, kind of indefinitely. These are hallmarks of the modern era. You can draw that line for the modern era on your own. And the modern era puts even more faith in human beings. That's the point. So make sure you understand the line relative to this one. The modern outlook is not a cyclical outlook on history. It believes that we can go beyond prior generations and we can sustain a progression over time. We are not destined to some type of decline or downfall. The Renaissance outlook, again, just to reiterate using this quote by Renaissance thinker Machiavelli, is that human beings do not enjoy that level of control. They do not have the same faith that modern human beings do in the ability to progress and go beyond and sustain progress. Instead, here you can see in Machiavelli's comment a belief that human beings have some control, and you can see that they believe that they can bring about another great era, but also a belief that human beings are not completely in control of their own destiny or their own fate. So Machiavelli says, I think it may be true that fortune, fate, destiny, is the ruler of half our actions, but that she allows the other half, or then he hedges, he says, or a little bit less, to be governed by us. So here's a view that a faith in human ability, that human beings have some control, but Machiavelli is saying half or a little bit less than half, and fate or destiny that is beyond human control is the determinant of more of human history than human beings asserting themselves on history. Okay, now flip to page 2, and let's take a look at the second, and you want to continue to jot down some good notes as you go along here. Page 2 starts with the question, what did the humanists, those are the names, that's the name of the intellectuals, the middle class, members of the middle class who carried out the Italian Renaissance, when they looked back to the Greeks and the Romans and their texts and their influence, what would they find? And how would these emphases compare to those of the medieval era? Remember, and you might note again, the goal of the Renaissance is to reorient or reformulate their society in terms of its values and its outlook. So as they look backwards to Greece and Rome for inspiration on reformulating and reshaping the outlook and the values of their society, of course, they're going to find the influence of Greco-Roman humanism. And Greco-Roman humanism is going to emphasize worldly accomplishment. It's going to emphasize the attainment of fame as a standard of success and a standard of living on after one's death. Greco-Roman humanism emphasizes living for life and accomplishing here and now and being remembered for it. Of course, this is going to be a very different emphasis compared to the medieval era. The medieval era, as we've described, is the most Christian era of any era of Western civilization. So what the middle-class merchants are doing here is they're going to start to reformulate the values of the society here a little bit. It's not all going to be about Christianity. Christianity with its primary emphasis on the afterlife, Greco-Roman humanism, the Greeks and the Romans, with its primary emphasis on life on earth. So what the Renaissance thinkers develop is they develop a new type of humanism. And you want to make sure you understand this new type of humanism, which we're going to be referencing going forward. Renaissance humanism, it's not all Greco-Roman humanism, and it's not all Christianity. It's a combination. So all of the Renaissance thinkers, these individuals who are intentionally bringing about this intellectual and cultural movement, they're all Christians. They all believe in a Christian afterlife. All of them are Christians, but they are also putting emphasis on worldly accomplishment. By weaving in the Greco-Roman humanism, now you have a different societal emphasis that while it's a Christian society, certainly, it also values and prizes and celebrates worldly accomplishment. And these are the two big pillars of traditional Western belief. You've got the Greco-Roman, emphasis of life on earth, and you've got the Christian. The combination equals Renaissance humanism. Renaissance humanism is a both at the same time. So make sure you get that down real clear. It is a combination. Renaissance humanism is Greco-Roman humanism plus Christianity. It's both an emphasis on worldly accomplishment and an emphasis on Christian practice and emphasis on the afterlife. Simultaneously, it's both. Now, why would the middle class in Italy, remember, Italy is the hub of trade, it has the largest middle class. This is worth jotting down for sure as well. Italy has the largest middle class. It has the wealthiest middle class. Therefore, it has the most influential middle class. Why would the middle class want to reformulate and reshape some of the values of the society? It's not just going to be a Christian focus anymore. They're certainly by no means throwing Christianity completely out the window, but now they're also going to weave in the earthly emphases of Greco-Roman humanism. Well, let's look at the medieval outlook on social class. And socially, now economically, obviously the middle class is above the peasants and the serfs. But socially, traditionally, in Western civilization, during the medieval time period, the middle class is considered to be the bottom rung. They're considered to be the lowest type of person. They're considered to have their priorities wrong, too worldly, etc. So what the middle class is going to do is they are going to start to look to the past. Greco-Roman humanism says, if you accomplish on earth, that's a great thing. That should be your goal. Well, the middle class, these are some very accomplished people on a worldly level. These are some very accomplished people. They've escaped serfdom. They've escaped peasantry. They've achieved financially in their business dealings to a great degree. So they are going to reformulate this society where earthly accomplishment is also celebrated alongside of Christian practice. And what this is going to do is this is going to spell the end of the medieval era. It's not just going to be emphasis on Christianity in the afterlife. The middle class is going to make itself more at home, and it is going to put greater stock and emphasis on earthly accomplishment so as to make itself, let's say, more prominent and make itself feel, frankly, more comfortable in their worldly accomplishments. This is going to influence Western civilization and as a whole, where Western civilization from this point forward is going to put more and more and more emphasis on worldly affairs, worldly considerations, and worldly success.